So Jeanett, thank you very much for making time to share your insights into the future of leadership. But before we walk into the future, can you tell us a little bit about your own background? Where did you grow up?
It's wonderful to have this opportunity to have a discussion with you today, Nick. I was born and brought up in Pretoria. Yeah. And I spent the bulk of my time working in Johannesburg, about 80% of my working career up to now, and the rest was in Cape Town. But on a personal note, I'm a parent to two young adults, and they're both professionals. So I'm first a mother, I am a community member participating in the community, and of course I'm a professional. In my early days, I actually wanted to become a medical doctor, very interestingly.
Okay.
And because I didn't have career guidance, you know how it's like when we don't have career guidance. I finished my matric and applied to university, but guess what? I didn't have funding to go and study. And the first place I went to look for a job was a public hospital.
Right.
And that's where I ended up employed and ultimately did a diploma in general nursing and midwifery. So I would say my career started off as a professional nurse.
Right. And today you're nursing people.
Today, I'm actually empowering people as opposed to nursing people. But you can see that people have always been at the heart of what I want to do, because then I worked for about 7 years as a professional nurse in the emergency unit. And the last 3 of the 7, I started to do a BCom part-time in business management. So that's how I transitioned from general nursing and midwifery. And as I completed my BCom, I went to look for a job opportunity in an environment where I could apply the skills that I was learning through my BCom studies. And that was the beginning of what brought me into corporate environment.
Right. Now, Jeanett, can you tell us who inspired you or what inspired you early on?
You know, during the time when I was working as a professional nurse, what inspired me to end up branching into the business environment was, at that time, there were only 2 routes that one could take as a professional nurse. You could either be a nursing services manager or matron, or you could be a tutor. And at the age of 23, I was already in charge of running an emergency unit for a big public hospital. And I realized I wanted to do more. So that's where the inspiration started. I pushed myself and I studied while I was working as a professional nurse, working long hours. And that actually, it made me realize that there is more in me and I want to do more. And that's how I ended up living when I completed my BCom. And I was so open to learning, so open to exploring opportunities that actually gave me, you know, the inspiration that there is more to life, actually. And this is just the beginning.
Now, Jeanett, you're leading a very impressive career. You've been leading the HR profession at some of South Africa's biggest brands like Sanlam and today ABSA. Looking back over your career, would you say there was a turning point? Or maybe a number of turning points?
Certainly, a number of turning points, Nick. The first turning point was when I transitioned from nursing to go into a corporate and begin to learn the HR environment where I had not worked in previously. But also, as I finished my BCom, working as an HR consultant. That's where I started. And then I was really blessed to be employed in global organizations. One of them was Hewlett-Packard, where I headed HR for Hewlett-Packard in South Africa. This gave me an opportunity again to learn in a global organization. So this was also broadening my scope, but it was also stepping in as a leader where I had a team, but I was responsible for the people function for Hewlett-Packard in South Africa, which means even if the head office was in the US, they relied on me as a leader when it comes to the HR portfolio and how I can be able to lead and guide and work with the EXCO within the South African environment. But that was only one. I realized that I enjoyed turnaround roles as opposed to just coming in, maintaining and working in the same role for a long time. I enjoyed bringing in change, bringing in new ideas while I'm also learning as well and in organization that I was in. And I made one decision that I will not leave any organization or any individual exactly the way I found them for as long as I have an opportunity to work with them. That was another turning point because it gave me an opportunity to begin to make choices, choices of when do I leave the organization and what are the goals that I'm going to achieve or deliver in that organization. But again, when I got to the time where it was, again, an opportunity for me to transition to a different role, because I've been blessed to be in EXCOs at a very, very early age in my career. And when you are at an EXCO level in an organization which is not a very large organization, the way to grow at that time was to transition to a different organization. And that's what I have done. But I have made sure that in every move I made, that my performance precedes me. And that I go away having learned, and that I go away having made a difference in the environment that I was living.
Right.
So that was the one transition for me. And I also had another transition, Nick, where there was a time when I was an executive general manager in Mutual and Federal. And I just had an opportunity, to go out, do some associate consulting work in human capital, and then start a property investment business, small property investment business, because that's my other passion. Mm-hmm. When I see a property, I'm able to tell from the superstructure to the interior to the exterior, what is it that I can do about it? I love property. And I went out and I had another turning point to do something of my own. And then later on, another turning point where I realized that the corporate environment is one of those environments where I go in as a leader to make a difference. And I went back into HR director roles. So yeah, I've had a number of turning points, but that's more from a career perspective. Personally, I've also had turning points as well in my life. So looking at both personal and professional life.
All right. So Jeanett, what would you say is driving you today?
For me now, Nick, is I look back at the career I've had, having been in executive roles in large global organizations within the financial sector, the technology sector, mining, and I've worked for state-owned entities as well as private companies. And when I look at the opportunities that I've had, not only to learn and grow, but also to build diverse perspectives. Right now, my focus is on making a difference in my personal life, in my community, making a difference in the organization I work with, but also the people that I have around me. It's about the whole ecosystem. It's about my purpose. I want to make sure that I'm a multiplier. I build and I grow future leaders, but also that I contribute through the organization that I work with in our force, our force for good intention. And again, I want to see leaders grow and flourish. So those are the things that really drive me personally.
Now, Jeanett, looking into the future, and I know it's a big question, but what does the future of leadership mean to you?
Nick, my view is like John Maxwell said, everything rises and falls on leadership. And I think the role of leaders is so important at the moment at all levels. And when one looks at the environment in which we operate, whether one is in corporate or running their own business, the business environment has become so complex, there's so much uncertainty and ambiguity. But on the other hand, there's a lot of challenges that come with being a leader. And I think looking into the future, and actually even now, is with this rapidly evolving environment in which we find ourselves, I think it's important for leaders to be culture champions. Because as a culture champion, you're not just looking at one organization, but you're looking at the whole ecosystem. And then the second thing is, it's important that the leader plays the role of developing and growing other people in their environments. A leadership role is very influential, and the kind of decisions that we make as leaders, they have a long-lasting impact. And I think it's important that one always approaches life with an open mind of continuous learning, a growth mindset, a mindset where as you grow, you also lift other leaders and you empower other leaders. I think for me, the other thing is, when I look at leadership now, the saying that if you want to go far, you can, if you want to go fast, you can go alone. But if you want to really go further, you need to make sure that you surround yourself with other people. A leader plays a critical role in building communities and in leveraging the power of diversity, collaborating with other people, because no one leader has all the answers, but we set the tone as leaders, and we are, required to contribute to building our communities, to contribute to building the countries in which we live, and to contribute to the different business sectors and influence the direction in areas where we are involved.
Right. Now, Jeanett, talking about future leaders, looking back over your own leadership journey, what have you learned that you consider most important for building future leaders and empowering future leaders?
I think if I reflect back on my experience, I would say it's important as a leader to ensure that you find the right support structures, a mentor, a coach. Look at the support that surrounds you. Don't try to go alone. And be open about learning. That's the first thing. Because these people will help you to guide you. But you need to take accountability for your own leadership, your own growth. You need to take accountability in building relationships around you, an ecosystem that you need to tap on when things are going well and when things are not going well. And I think it's important to have a clear vision of what is it that you really want in your personal and your professional life. Because once you have clarity of that, it becomes easier to get support, but it also becomes easier for you to begin to map your career journey and to be able to make the kind of choices and tough decisions in order for you to be able to build the right capabilities as a leader, build the right habits, but also to be able to make sure you invest in the right things. Everything that you do should be a stepping stone towards where you want to go. The other thing that I have learned, which has worked very well for me, is that it's important to try and look at work-life integration as opposed to just being one direction only. And it's important to invest in your well-being, because the more well you are, the more rested, the more energized, the more you are in a position to give back. It's important to be comfortable in your own space, to be vulnerable, to be able to share your experiences, but also it's important that you can't share what you don't have. If you are exhausted and you're not investing in your health and well-being as a leader, it's impossible to bring your best in an environment where you are engaging or where you are working. And then the third thing, I think it's important to think of the impact that one wants to leave behind. Mm-hmm. I think for me, what I found is that I'm only as strong as my team. And I also play a role in the teams where I'm also one of the participants. And therefore, it's important to invest in building relationships, making sure you communicate well with the people around you, but also find areas that are of interest for you as a person and those that you can share with the other individuals. Find that spot where you can be an extraordinary leader, because we are human. It's important that you look at how you lead yourself, how you build your professional side and your personal side. So I think those are interrelated.
Thank you. Now, Jeanett, as you mentioned, these are challenging times as the world is stumbling from one crisis into the next. What is your advice for future leaders in terms of challenges? What are some of the biggest challenges they should expect to encounter and hopefully overcome in their career?
I think the most important thing is that of the fact that change is here to stay. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I do is to look at the challenges I go through as positive stress. There is a certain level of stress that you need, but you need to make sure that you build your resilience to be able to navigate this challenging, complex environment. And I think as a leader now, I always say there's no leader who was born a CEO. They might have inherited an organization or a business, but they had to learn somewhere and somebody had to support them. So I would say it's important for leaders to realize they don't have to have all the answers. It's important to be vulnerable, to be able to, leverage on, the strength and the partnership of the people around you, because together you can be much stronger. Together you can go further, like I said. And I think the need to continue to invest in yourself as a leader cannot be overemphasized. Is something that is very, very critical to build that long-term resilience, strength, and manage your energy in order to be able to continue and have a healthy but a much longer life. We live longer these days, and we can only do that when you are healthy mentally, emotionally, and physically as well. I think leaders need to be open. They need to be open to working with different generations. They need to be agile and be able to adapt to different environments. And my view is that if one doesn't become part of the change will happen to you. I prefer to be a catalyst for change. I prefer to be part of the change, because as I go through those experiences, there is a certain level of fulfillment. And then I know I can make a positive impact where I am. It's important that you are not looking at your role or your business as a job. I speak of experiences.
Yeah. Now, Jeanett, if you were to design a curriculum for future leaders, what are some of the new skills you would want to factor in?
Definitely emotional intelligence. It's important that one can be in a position to understand the environment in which you operate as a leader and understand the interdependencies, even the impact of your own actions and decisions on other people and how you can complement each other. I think that is very important. As a leader, one must be able to read the room and must be able to learn from others and be able to move forward in such a way that they look at the interest of the various stakeholders. I think, openness to learn, curiosity to learn is very important, because we know that the leader skills, they continue to evolve just as our business environment evolves. And when you are curious, then you have interest in knowing people better, understanding people, where they are coming from, but also even in understanding businesses and the interdependencies of the environments in which we operate. It propels you to be able to see different perspectives, to learn, but also to bring a difference. I would say the other thing is communication and engagement are very important. In fact, the strong technical capabilities, it's easier to have them as leaders because we all study the various programs, but it's the capabilities and the skills that previously were underestimated that are very important in this environment where we are. Anyone can always learn a program, but those skills and capabilities that will help you to collaborate and work with other people to understand the business environment better and the environment you are in better, just the way you think and you come up with solutions and you have the interests of the various stakeholders. Those are the kind of skills that, in my view, they can take you further and they can help you to continue to reinvent yourself, your career, personally and professionally.
Now, Jeanett, as a mentor to so many future leaders, can you maybe share a success story or two where you mentored an upcoming leader and that person took your advice to heart?
I love that question, Nick. And long since I started as an HR executive, somehow coaching has always been part of what I do, to an extent where even now I recently graduated from an MPhil in management coaching. But I've got a few examples. One was where I was working in this organization, and the executive assistant for the director general, who happened to be my direct line manager, I realized this person had an honors in industrial psychology, and they were working as an executive assistant. And I started to engage with her more to understand her interests and where she comes from. And I realized she has passion for HR. She ended up moving into HR, working in my team. And fast forward, I continued to mentor and coach her. And she moved to director, human resources, chief director. And a year ago, she was appointed as chief executive of the government printing works. And I have another example. There's a number of them where people have moved to HR executive, CEO, with the mentoring and the coaching. But I never did it as a business where I was raising money for it. It's because it's something that I'm passionate about. I've got an example of someone who used to be my PA, actually, also another example of a person who was my PA. And engaging with her, I could see she could do more. And I started to mentor her, coach her, encourage her to study BCom. And although she hasn't finished yet, she's now the facilities manager and occupational health and safety manager for L'Oreal Africa. And someone who was brave, but they needed somebody to coach and support them. I also have a few other leaders that I have been coaching. One is HR executive in another listed entity The other one is a deal maker in a large financial institution. And I've coached men and women. And it's something that I believe leaders need to contribute to others to lift as you are also growing as a leader.
Right. Now, Jeanett, looking back over your leadership journey and maybe your learning journey, are there any role models of leadership that you encountered, that you maybe worked with, that you would recommend future leaders should learn from?
Definitely. I always talk about standing on the shoulders of giants. And I've done that very well, learning. And some of them I learned from far. One of them is, I referred to previously, John Maxwell. He's one of those leaders that I have been following for a very long time, learning from him. And I still do that even now. And of course, people like Bishop T.D. Jakes, because I believe everyone needs to be grounded. And I know where I'm grounded. I am a Christian, I'm grounded, I work in a diverse environment, but that's where I go. I pray. And that's where I get my insights, in addition to what I have studied, to lead, to manage, and to work with other people. And of course, some of the people that I'm looking at are young leaders. My daughter is one of them. She does reverse coaching now because she's at a stage where she's a professional, she's well qualified, but I engage with her. We have conversations about critical topics, and it shows how we complement each other. And of course, the CEOs that I have worked with previously, men mostly, but these people have empowered me to even be in a position to empower others as a leader, and especially women in the workplace.
Now, Jeanett, how can our listeners connect with you, and where should they follow you?
Your listeners can find me on LinkedIn, Nick. That's, I find, is the easiest medium where people can reach to me. And of course, once we make the first connection, it becomes easier to even share contact details. But I also, from time to time, participate in various initiatives where I speak, and sometimes it's conferences and webinars and so on. And from time to time, I also participate in, ensuring that I put my word out there, my insights on articles and so on. So it's quite easy for people to really reach me.
Now, last but not least, Jeanett, what is your message to the millions of learners out there who are finishing school, who are looking to enter the world of work? What are maybe one or two success principles that they should keep in mind?
I think, firstly, it's important to make sure that you build a few people who can support you. Find someone that can guide you, mentor. If you have questions, make sure that you reach out to get support. And secondly, get assistance and have clarity in terms of what is it that you want to do in your career. And build a plan on how you will grow your career, leveraging on the support structures that you have. Invest in your health and well-being. Build strong relationships. You cannot be an island. In order to learn, to grow, you also need to be strong. It's important to build your resilience and ensure that you communicate well. But one of the things I can say very important is never be afraid to say, I need help or I don't know. And don't be afraid to raise your hand whenever you look, you see opportunities where you can be given exposure, opportunities where you can be able to learn and grow. I think it's very, very important to be able to be open to learning. So there's a number of things that one needs to do, but make sure that you put a plan in place and take charge for your own learning and your growth. That's what I would advise young leaders.
Thank you. Thank you. Jeanett, thank you so much for sharing your insights and your wisdom into the future of leadership and for inspiring and building so many future leaders.
Thank you, Nick. This is something I'm very passionate about, and I hope we will have opportunities to connect again in future.